Going through my collection in the last video, I found that there was a lot of film cameras in my list. And they all kind of fell into three categories, being the point and shoot, the SLR, and the medium format camera. Each camera is used for certain situations. I wouldn't use a point and shoot camera for an editorial event, but I also wouldn't use a medium format camera for me going out on a night with friends. So I thought, what if I treated each format like a personality test? We have the memory shooter for point and shoot, we have the street photographer for the SLR, and then we have the slightly studio enthusiast for the medium format. But I'll get into more detail about that. Today, I'll be giving you the pros and cons of each one of these tiers, and then also sharing photographers that you might like based off of where you're at. And of course, the most important part of all, I'm going to suggest some cameras for you and me to buy. So what is a point and shoot? What I'm categorizing as a point and shoot is anything with a fixed lens, a small body, somewhat cheap construction depending on which one. It's compact and user friendly, not only for the person shooting, but the people that are standing on the other side. So pros for this camera is simple layout. You can pass this camera to anyone. One of the things that you'll hear a lot is you'll take a picture and say, "Can I see it?" You flip it around and you say, "No, it's film, we gotta wait." But it being so simple, it being so fun and interactive, everyone wants to be a part of it, whether they're on one side or the other. 100% a pro for point and shoot cameras. The cons, of course, of a point and shoot camera, though extremely fun, is that it's so limiting. You can't change the lens. Depending on the model that you have, it has a really cheap construction. But I wouldn't let this stop you. Point and shoots are so much fun. It's also easy to collect them because they're not that expensive, quote unquote, but they all have a little unique quirk or setup, which is really, really cool. I don't have any photographers to compare you to if you are in the memory shooter snap. I'd say, even though they're not using point and shoots, which is kind of messing up my whole thing here, is William Eggleston. He takes pictures that are very, very simplistic and seem like snapshots. That's why, and a Michael Parr as well. Those two, even though they're not using that, that's your method or visual pictures that you're taking. And for cameras that I would suggest, I have the Canon SureShot 76 zoom, perfect. Put it in your eBay cart, buy it, just make sure that it's official. It's excellent. I absolutely love it. Now, for two cameras that I have not used, but I have done tons of research for, is the Nikon L35 AF. There's several different versions. Look up some videos, figure out which one is best for you, but I feel like the older technology is a little scary at times when it comes to that particular model, as well as the Yashica T4. Both, I've heard a lot of complaints about one thing going wrong and now you kind of can't use the camera ever again. But I also hear about how amazing the pictures are and how unique they look in comparison to any other point and shoot. The next section is for the person who already went through their memory phase. They want to actually have some type of input on what their picture comes out as. And that's where I moved to the SLR. I absolutely love the SLR because you start to get that metal body. You start to feel like a film shooter. You start to feel like you're a part of everyone else who's ever held this type of camera ever in life. And you get to choose whether you want a prime lens or zoom lens. It's so many different great things and glass shooting experiences that add all together once you step up into this level. You are now the street photographer. You would find out on this level that physically, when it's touching the metal body, pulling the lever and things of that nature, it's so much fun. And having the option, like I said before, of switching out lenses to adjust your f-stop or your focal length or whatever you want to do and actually be more personable with your photos that you're taking, it's a whole different experience. And I think that's really fun. And that's why I say that the shooter would be a street photographer, because you're now running around, you're trying to capture moments, but you want to show it in your own way, much like a Winogrand, who is using, yes, I know, a rangefinder. A rangefinder versus a SLR are different when it comes to the mechanisms and the mirror setup that's on the inside, but they kind of shoot the same way. Cons for the SLR is that there isn't really one. this is a really great spot. The ones that I like are the Minolta X700, metal body, shoots in aperture priority mode, has a flash sync speed of something that was okay. It wasn't amazing, but I really enjoyed that camera, and I think that it gave me enough ability to be manual while still having the assistance of the aperture priority mode, because that's really what I wanted to shoot in. Another option that you would have here is the Canon AE1. Like I said in my other video, that was just a little bit too popular for me. So this is definitely a good option for beginners, and it being so famous, and I guess there has to be so many because it's so popular. So it shouldn't be expensive at all for you to get this type of camera. And then my third one is the Nikon F3. I've done a lot of research when it comes to this camera, and it's spoken to so unbelievably highly. It has the higher viewpoint for its viewfinder, so if you wear glasses, this is supposed to be excellent for you. It of course has the internal light meter, it has the aperture priority mode that I was talking about, and it's not overly professional, but it's still a tier above the Canon and the Minolta that I just expressed. So do your research on these three, but I kind of want to get back to that X700. Maybe I will one day. Now I'm talking to the guy or girl that wants to take real photos. This is the medium format shooter. They either want to be in the studio taking pictures of more editorial things, having photo shoots, they're setting stuff up, they have a calendar. Or they love the TLR, so they're still running gun, but they need that picture to be really, really good. We're talking to the studio enthusiast who's kind of on the run. How would I define this camera? I would define a medium format by its gigantic shutter window. It allows you to get far more detail. It allows you to see differently when it comes to the lenses you're using because of glass and flange distance and all these other things that I don't know. They're over my head. But I promise you, this is an actual difference between SLR or 35 millimeter to medium format. A lot of the times I feel as though we are bouncing back and forth between, say, Nikon or Canon or Minolta or Yashica, and we're saying, oh, these are these small little differences that make this 35 millimeter so different than every other one. Medium format is actually a gigantic difference, a huge jump between the two different formats. Cons for this type of camera, at least for the Mamiya RB67, because that's what I personally use, it's huge. It's huge, and then things start to get really expensive. Because remember, this is supposed to be a studio camera for professionals. So there's not really too much play once you get up here. But that's where the TLR is a little bit different, because so many things were made for it. It's shot in a square format. It's a very, very unique way of shooting, so it's a little bit cheaper due to that. If you really like medium format and you're even willing to go into TLR, the photographers that I would compare you to are Dane Arbus and Vivian Myers, because they both shoot with the twin lens reflex, and they've created great photos of freaks and geeks versus being a nanny. And if those interest you, especially in an older time period, that type of photography, please check them out. They're outstanding. But that's who I would compare you to. So what would I suggest here? I would suggest being extremely patient, but the Mamiya RB67, because it's a fantastic camera that I still need to shoot far more with, but make sure you're carrying a tripod because your arms will get unbelievably tired. But if you want something in between that medium format and 35 millimeter, in between the SLR shooting style and the box basically of medium format for the Mamiya RB67, it would be the Mamiya 645, because it has a much smaller form factor. That window that I was talking about shrinks a little bit, but it's still much better than 35 millimeter. So it's much lighter, so you can actually run and gun with it, but you still get the pros of a much bigger image box. And then obviously I praised it with my two photographers. TLR. I don't have a exact brand to go to because this has been made by so many different companies, but overall you get the same shooting experience. Maybe look into it just for the reliability of each camera. That's where the brand would become important, I believe.